Next, talk shows. Going back to air in Hollywood with the end of the writers' strike. A new deal paving the way for TV's late night to return to work. They were the first affected when the strike began, with NBC's The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, and Late Night with Seth Meyers, and ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live, and The Late Show with Stephen Colbert on CBS instantly closing down. But getting full scripted shows up and running again may well take some time, as the actors are still withdrawing labour, pounding the streets with their placards. Let's get the analysis. Jordan Mintz joins us. He's from The Hollywood Reporter, the best place to go to find out about this issue. Jordan, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
So the writers' strike is now sorted. It's all sorted out.
Well, they've reached an agreement, but the writers still have to approve the agreement. So there's a referendum that's going to happen, and there's about 11,500 writers that have to agree on the referendum, and that's going to happen in next week, the vote. But it looks like they got what they wanted, and they're going to probably agree to it and go back to work.
So there's this fear about the use of artificial intelligence. Is that central to what happened?
Absolutely. When ChatGPT came out, one of the first things people started to do with it was to write with it. And right away, Hollywood took advantage of that technology to start working on movie ideas and to get the algorithm to write the movie ideas. And obviously, the writers have seen that as a major problem. They could lose their jobs. And in this agreement, they actually got the studios to agree not to use AI, not to use ChatGPT in this kind of software, unless the writers agree to use it too. So there can be a project, and they say we all agree to try some AI for it, but basically it won't be used on studio movies or any movie that's, or TV show that's made in Hollywood.
Indeed. So the AI issue is the thing that I think caught the headlines because it was new, because it was the new tool that people were getting introduced to. But there was also the issue about streaming and repeat payments for things streamed on the likes of, the usual sort of networks. I won't name the names because that's advertising, but those kind of issues. Is all that sorted too?
Somewhat. They reached an agreement on the streaming, which is, streaming has been around for about 5 or 10 years, but it's really taken over, Hollywood. And the problem with streaming is nobody knows how many times a show is watched. There's no way of counting. When you have a movie and it goes in a theater, we all know how much money it makes. Or when a TV show is watched, we know how many people watch it. But streaming, for now, they haven't been transparent about communicating those numbers. And what the writers got them to do in the agreement, in this new agreement, was to say, okay, we're going to communicate some numbers, not all the numbers, but enough that we can calculate how well a show did, and you will receive a bonus as a writer based on how a show or on how a movie does on a streaming platform. So it is a breakthrough in that sense.
Just checking that I've understood this, though. So a series goes out once, and obviously everyone gets paid. This is classic on classic TV. It goes out once, and everyone gets paid. Goes out again, repeated by the TV network, everyone gets paid. The problem with the streaming network is that I might watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine 10 times in a row, and the writer would get paid once instead of 10 times. Is that the issue?
Exactly. They would get paid up. They get paid up front, obviously, to write the show. And then there was like a minimum payment that they would receive for streaming. But if a show was watched one time or 1 billion times, they get the same minimum payment. And now
that seems unfair. I'm not taking sides, but that seems unfair.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things the writers have been screaming about, for a few years. And I would say that's the main reason they went on strike, even more so than the AI. AI was a new thing that came kind of in the last few months before the strike started. But so they managed to get the studios to agree, the platforms, so Netflix, Amazon Prime, to agree to communicate some figures, and they can calculate a bonus. It's not the same thing as royalties from a movie that comes out and makes $1 billion, but it's better than what they had, which was nothing.
Okay, that sounds like it's a step in the right direction for the writers. How about the actors? They are still on the streets with their placards. What do they want?
Pretty much the same thing, actually. The two of the main things are, again, AI, and which is, I would say, in some ways for the actors even more terrifying, because the idea was actors could be scanned digitally, and then that's the end of their job, and then they just have digital performers, and they get paid only once to be scanned. That's one thing. And streaming is the same thing. Again, calculating if they get residuals payments based on a streaming show. So they're going to their actors they haven't actually gone back to the negotiation table because I think they're waiting for the writers to settle their thing. They're going to go back soon. And it sounds like the studios, if what they were willing to do with the writers was to bend on a lot of the issues, it sounds like they'll do the same thing for the actors.
Because everybody says, or thinks rather, from layman's terms, from where I'm looking at it, that actors are all Brewstered, minted, very, very rich, in other words. Now, that's not the case, I know. And there are some that are incredibly rich, incredibly famous. So who are the famous ones leading the strike? Give us a Hollywood billing.
I think all the Hollywood actors, that's the thing. There's been a lot of solidarity this time for the strike. So you have like famous actors like Meryl Streep going out and speaking. Fran Drescher, the head of the Actors Union, is a pretty famous actress in America. She was on the Nanny for years, and she's very outspoken. So there's a lot more solidarity, but there's 160,000 actors in the Actors Union. You know, I probably 1 or 2% of them are the stars we hear about. The rest of them are doing second roles or extras, and they're the ones that are really worried because they're the ones that, especially by stuff like AI, their careers can be affected.
Because you could create, I suppose, in a back area of sort of an AI sort of backdrop with what looks like real people.
Well, I'll tell you what the studios proposed and what the actors refused initially was that an extra who would go on a studio, who would work on a movie, say for 10 days in a fight scene, being an extra in the background. The idea of the studios was, we will scan you on the first day digitally, pay you $200, which was the fee for an extra, and then that's the end of you. And the rest of the time, we'll be able to insert you digitally in the background of the scene. And so you're losing 9 days of revenue out of 10. And that's what they were fighting about. That's one of the main issues.
And indeed, how does an actor who becomes a star discover about the whole process if they don't start off at that kind of level?
That's a good point. It's, there's a whole learning process in Hollywood. One of the big things about the writer's strike was the writers' rooms, where the writers create TV shows, because working with the streamers, the writers' rooms were getting smaller. The time developing a series was getting much shorter. And so they fought and they won that they could have a minimum amount of time to develop a TV show and a minimum amount of writers sitting in the writers' room with them.
It's like they talk about have AI journalists and presenters of news. They don't have the same instincts. They don't have to make the same phone calls. They don't ask the same questions. They don't do the same things.
Hopefully we won't be replaced soon.
Sir, you're welcome to come here anytime you wish. Very entertaining. Thank you very much to Jordan Mincer from The Hollywood Reporter with all we need to know about the writer's strike, things getting back to normal, and maybe the actors are going to follow suit if they eventually settle up. Jordan, thank you, sir, very much for joining us on France 24. We appreciate your time. Thank you.